Well, folks, the first thing I want to make sure you're aware of this week is that you have your first reflective essay due at the end of the week. It asks you to recall all the things that we have said that the health humanities might be good for, and then to reflect specifically on narrative medicine. Do you think narrative medicine can help fulfill the purposes of health humanities as it relates to the training of healthcare professionals? And if so, why or why not? And what limitations do you see for the effectiveness of narrative medicines? So you can see here in this reflective essay prompt that in these reflective essays, I'm asking you to think critically about the material that you have looked at. In this case, thinking particularly about, or thinking critically about, what prospects or promise narrative medicine holds for fulfilling the goals of the health humanities, and what limitations there might be on that. Okay, you have 3 assigned readings this week. The first one is just a little 5-page PDF file called Analyzing Short Stories that looks at a variety of things that you can think about or notice as you encounter any sort of fictional narrative like the Metamorphosis, which we'll be looking at later. Your second reading is by David Flood and Rhonda Sorcelli. It's called Illuminating the It, Thee, and We of Disease and Illness. And it is an analysis of 3 themes you will find in the Metamorphosis, and then an account of a variety of other literature from this field that addresses those similar themes. Finally, you will read, of course, The Metamorphosis itself by Franz Kafka. This is the longest and by far the most time-consuming of your assignments, and it's the one where your focus should rest. Now, I do want you to know that I'm aware that the Metamorphosis is not an easy read, and I want to alert you to some of the reasons why that is the case, and maybe if you're aware of them before you begin, that'll help you get past some of these things that make it difficult. Now, maybe the first thing to be said is that the story the Metamorphosis tells is absurd. A man named Gregory Samsa wakes up one morning and finds that he's turned into some kind of disgusting vermin, or some people translate it as a dung beetle. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. There's no explanation for how or why that has happened. But don't let that absurdity keep you from enjoying the story. A second thing that people struggle with is the density of the writing. Kafka wrote in German. German often has long, convoluted sentences. Kafka often has long, convoluted sentences, even noteworthy within the German language. So it's difficult to read sometimes. You may have to read sentences over again, or even whole paragraphs over again to quite get into them. But first, don't be upset if you find yourself having that struggle, but do try to overcome that limitation, you might say. A third thing to be said is that it isn't obvious what the meaning or significance of the story that Kafka tells is. It's open to multiple readings, multiple interpretations. Now, you might see that as a strength, but it also times can be a bit of a barrier because it's operating on multiple levels of meaning, and there are multiple ways to get into the story. Now, maybe the next thing to be said is that it gets into some really deep themes. Kafka was influenced by a philosophical movement called existentialism, which tended to crawl very deeply into the darkest parts of the human experience, and it's bleak. It doesn't offer any easy resolution of the themes that it addresses. There's no clear progression to overcoming the conflicts that the narrative introduces. So it's going to cause you to encounter some fairly deep themes, and it could be seen as pretty dark and bleak in its display of those themes. Now, as I've said, we're going to be reading it as an extended metaphor for the human experience of severe illness or injury. We're going to read it looking for Kafka's insight to the human experience beyond the merely physiological aspects of severe illness and injury. And drawing upon the work of Flood and Sorcelli, I'm going to alert you to 3 themes to be looking for in the Metamorphosis. Alienation and isolation as something that people who are severely ill or injured experience. The way in which such illness or injury impacts the identity, primarily of the one who suffers the illness, but illness and injury also has impacts on a patient's family and others, and maybe including their identity. So look out for these 3 themes. Focus your attention maybe on identifying what Kafka has to say about Gregor and about all of us around these 3 themes. Your discussion board prompt this week asks you to focus on that theme of alienation and isolation, and it asks you, can you identify with or relate to Gregor's experience in any way? Have you ever experienced or witnessed illness or injury causing alienation and isolation? Or maybe you can move beyond illness and injury if you need to. Have you ever experienced otherness yourself, or contributed to the alienation and isolation of another, whether or not that was related to illness or injury? Now, remember, always in these discussion board posts and always in your writing, you need to display your familiarity with the relevant course material. So refer concretely and specifically to aspects of the Metamorphosis as you answer these questions. Now, you will also have a reflective essay ultimately on the Metamorphosis due at the end of next week. It will ask you to reflect on or recall all 3 of the themes that Flood and Sorcelli have identified, and then ask you to respond to this. What are the most significant insights you think the Metamorphosis offers on what it's like to be severely ill or injured? What do you now understand about that experience that you didn't understand before? But also, are there aspects of the illness experience that you think Kafka completely misses or that he gets wrong? Talk about the ways in which he might have done a better job at helping us understand what it's like to be severely ill or injured.